Welcome back, everybody. In this video, we'll try to go through the Angular structure and at least explain a few files that are found in your Angular application. The previous video, we were able to just set up our app and be able to save it on port 4200. Without wasting much of our time, let's just jump straight into the structure of our app. Angular by default will create a couple of files that specify how this app behaves, right? I'm only going to take a look at about three most important ones, and then we go straight into the code. The first one being the angular.json file. This is like a bunch of configurations that tells you the what and where about your application files or folders. So in here, you can see that line 22, it's stating that the browser tried to run, the main.ts file and then kind of show the things that are being shown there. We'll take a look at that file just now, but let's go again to the other file, which is the package.json. The package.json just has a couple of commands on how to run your app, how to build your app, and how to watch any files or test your app with just a command. Remember when we typed ng-save, it means that it goes behind the scene and execute npm run start, because remember your package.json is being controlled by npm or managed by the npm. And you can see here this line 10, we don't have to be worrying about it. Anything that you see with the server prefix or server name, don't really worry about it. It is to do with server-side rendering, which I said it's not part of this series. Otherwise, the bottom part here, you can see that it's specifying the dependencies that Angular kind of adds for us by default. Whenever you add a new npm package, then they will come in here, and then obviously then the dev dependencies. These are mostly the dependencies that you just use whenever you are coding, not the ones that that are gonna be bundled or be built with your app as it goes out there. So yeah, I mean, we don't really have to worry about this. If you want to do some reading on what each and every one of these packages do, well, you can go for it. But then, for example, line 18, Angular add forms will allow you to either use reactive forms or the normal forms that Angular provide, and then you can just use functionalities from there, like your ng model statements and ifs and all those other interesting stuff that Angular provides from scratch. Another file is the tsconfig. This is just your strict rules that TypeScript provide for you on, okay, I want this app to only allow maybe 30 characters in one line, otherwise do next line. I wanted to use the module ES22 2022. You can even change this to 2020 2016 or other years, but I mean, I always like to keep it the latest. These are like your strict rules on how your app compiles or it does linting on your app. And the last file before we go to the main app, it's your main.ts file. This is just an app that bootstraps your app by pulling in your app component that we're going to take a look at right now, and it just kind of save it into the browser. Index.html, this is what gets saved whenever you are running an app, and you can see here it's loading app-root. And if I go to app-root, it's something that have to come here, and then you can see the app.component ts has a selector name app.root. Well, don't worry if you don't understand the whole structure. We'll go through it right now. I was just showing you the connection between these different files. A component is a fundamental building block of an Angular application. So each component consists of parts like your template, your style sheet, which is here the CSS part of it, and as well as the name of your selector and your class, which in the class, that's where you add logic. If you want to add functions to process certain things, you add them inside these code blocks. When it comes to the structure, it's quite simple and straightforward, right? I'll start here at the top. Here at the top, you are just importing some component and the router outlet from Angular core and then the Angular router here, right? And then it has this at component attribute. What this allows you to do, it allows you to just change any class in JavaScript and then make it a component. Of course, this only allows it's only allowed in Angular. But then this component has, it has a selector. A selector, you can just give it any name. In this case, it's app-root, which is the very same selector name that was used in our index.html file, right? And then as you go back to the file, if you see this tag that says standalone, it's a new concept that Angular is using, wherein it allows you to just save these components without a need to add an ng module. I'll explain what an ng module is and how we can change this component to use an ng module style instead of the standalone approach. And then obviously with this imports, it also goes with the things that you would like to use in this component. In this case, they say the router outlet, and then obviously then there's the template URL. Template is just obviously the file that will be having every HTML any HTML that you might want to use in your app. In this case, I think they already use, CSS in it, and it's not a big issue. You can always move that CSS out of it. You can see here, this is the HTML that is there. And let's say we say hello there, and then I save. Then if I go here, you can see that it has added hello there and then just reloaded real time, which is great, right? So if we go back to our component, you can see that we do have the style URL, which is the file that will be having all our CSS. So we can just write our CSS, maybe say Cator content, and then we do that. Then let's say we do that. Then it should be able to just apply this whenever we import it into our HTML. So which is what I really like about Angular. It's because it kind of separates these files and have them in, separate places. This is actually my first time using Sass as an extension for my CSS. And yeah, I'm getting this very weird errors. So I'm choosing to pivot to use SCSS instead. But how do we change that since we already have created our project so far? Turns out the Sass syntax is quite different from how a normal CSS file would look like. So I would like to just change this by going to the angular.json file and then type SCSS instead of Sass. So I'm just gonna try search for it in here. Inline style language. I think I'll just try to change it anywhere where it says Sass, and then I'll just change it to SCSS. I'll go down here as well. Here as well. So just to ensure that there's nowhere else we're in this SCSS. To complete this, I just then go ahead and change this name from this name extension from styles.sass to styles.scss, and then just like that, enter, and then in here as well, rename. I know this looks like a pretty small job, but once we have that, at least it will take out a few problems from our plate. Finally, this has been taken out of the way. Then now if I write a normal CSS here, it will look good, and I can also just format the document just like that, which is fine. Another file you might want to take a look at, it's the app.config.ts. This is just where you can add in your providers. Your providers are just things that you might want to import into your app to be able to use. For example, there is a function called provide router coming from Angular router, which allows you to specify any custom routes within your app. So where you're going to navigate, let's say for example we have the home page, the contact us, the cart, and the product pages, we will be able to add our routes in here. As a way to embrace the use of AI in our programming, I went ahead and just asked Gemini to add routes for home, product, cart, category, and checkout account in this app routes TS file. So the only thing I might have to just do is click the add button, and obviously I just need to remove the first part of the code like that. I think this is just warnings that I should use with caution and stuff like that, which is fine. But for me here, I'll just ensure that this works by, let me point them all to one component so that it doesn't have those red lines. And then whenever we have new components, we can come back and change them. Of course, after adding that, it will add the duplication of these things, and that is because in your app component HTML file, you used that section and also added the router outlet. So what do we need to do? Let's create another component that at least will just be having the home stuff. To be able to just create a new component, you can just see ngg, which is generate, and then c being component, and then you give it the component name you want to generate, which is home in this case. It's going to edit, and it's going to edit inside the app there. So then ensure that we pull it in correctly here. I can just come in and say home component. And if I refresh, you can see the home component is kind of pulled in. So I would just like to go to the home component and then maybe change this to an H1 so that it can be a bit bigger. Save that, and it works. Go back to the app component, HTML, and then remove everything else other than the router outlet. The reason why we didn't remove this is to tell Angular that the content that is going to be printed here is going to be dynamic, and it's going to be dynamic from these provided routes that we have here, and then these provided routes are specified here to say, okay, whenever it's our home, then print out the home component, which we know its configuration is to show what is being shown on their side. I would like you guys to also understand how this route file kind of configures our routes. The first line, which is line 6, would be saying that on the path we're in this, it's empty, which means if it's like this, redirect to a path called home, which home is configured there. And obviously the path has to match fully. And the home path has a component called home component, which means it's going to show anything that has to go with the home component. If we go to the home component, we can see it's quite simple. It just has a selector name called app home, and it's showing the home component HTML to the user, which that home HTML component has this homeworks. If I want to just update it, I'll just write my name, save, and then it will same time reload and then show back to the user. We are to just check other paths here. They are just, for me, just default for now. But what you might want to understand here is you can see there's this .id that has been put here. This allows you to put any dynamic or any ID into a path. So for example, something like product / that, and then let's say the ID is like kind of a random characters, then you can be able to do that, and then it will still not fail. But what happens if you do a route that doesn't exist? Then we will do that, and then you can see that it just shows literally nothing. The likelihoods is on the console. It tells us cannot match any route segment, route not found, which is what I just typed. But then you can be able to prevent that by saying at the bottom here an asterisk, and then just tell it to redirect to here, and that is that. So it means that for any route that is not found, wait, it needs to be double of these, and then do that to redirect to a home, and then for any route that is not found, or which means if we type here not found route or whatever random route, it should be able to redirect us back to the home page, and it won't fail now. Make sure you add this at the bottom of this path, and yeah, that is just it. There's been other few people that has been getting issues on setups and just had general questions to ask me, and they said it was a bit difficult to find how they can get in touch. So for you to be able to do it, you can just go to cator.co.za, and then you will be able to see that there is a book a chat wherein you can have a one-on-one chat with me, or you can just go to the bottom and then click on community. It will show you a Discord community wherein you can have a chat with me and then just request to join. Otherwise, don't forget to subscribe, like, and follow, and tell your friend to tell your friend that whatever we're cooking on YouTube is going to be bigger than anything ever being cooked.